And we thank you for joining us for this special report. Today, we honor and celebrate the life of Eleanor Rosalynn Smith Carter, better known as Rosalynn Carter, the wife of former President Jimmy Carter.
Now, she served as the First Lady of the state of Georgia in 1970, and then, of course, became the First Lady for the entire nation from 1977 until 1981. Mrs. Carter was born and raised in the small town of Plains, where many have gathered today. They're there to honor and remember her. The Carters never forgot their roots. Their Plains home, built in 1960, is the only home they have ever owned. Many people who live in Plains have literally been lifelong friends with the Carters. That's why so many people have gathered downtown right now. They're out in the cold. Because of them, this is their last chance to pay their respects.
And in some ways, the Carters put the town of Plains on the map. Plains was on the world stage when Jimmy Carter announced his presidential campaign in 1974. At the time, many asked, "Jimmy who?" But it did not take long for people around the world to connect with both Jimmy and Rosalynn because they saw a genuine South Georgia family with the Southern values they learned in Plains.
Right now, many close friends and family are gathered inside this church. That's the Maranatha Baptist Church. It's on the north end of Plains, and that's where Mrs. Carter's funeral services will be held later this morning. And that's where the two weren't only church members for so long, but they also taught Sunday school.
That is right. Now, the first service at Maranatha Baptist Church was in 1977, Jimmy Carter's first year as president. When he left office in 1981, the Carters moved back to Plains and they became full-time church members.
Now, let's take a look inside the church. You see Mrs. Carter's funeral service will start shortly after 11 this morning. Shortly after the motorcade arrives at the church from the Carter home, there you see her casket and the honor guard from the Georgia State Patrol. And
of course, we plan to air the entire service live right here on TV and on the WALB News 10 app, uninterrupted, so you can watch the entire service.
Now, let's take a look at today's route for the procession that will depart. Well, let's go ahead and take a look. The procession, there's the route. And let's go ahead and it'll go east on Church Street through downtown Plains, then turn left onto North Bond Street and travel to the Maranatha Baptist Church, where that private funeral will take place.
And then after the service, the funeral procession will travel to Woodland Drive. That will end the public part of the services as it continues to the Carter residence, where private interment will take place. No media will be present at that.
Now let's take a look. We believe the procession has started. A number of police and escorts have gone there, and right now there to tell us all about it is our WALB News 10's Jamie Worsley and Madison Foglio. They are downtown along the procession route.
That's right. They're right in front of Billy Carter's service station on Church Street, where this is, of course, today a large gathering of the public and the media.
Well, Jim and Carla, good morning. Actually, the procession had just passed by. It went by very quickly, but you could just feel the tributes pouring in from the hundreds of people that showed up today here in Plains, the outpouring of love and support, the cheers that people were giving as Rosalynn passed by. It was just beautiful to see.
It really was, and there are hundreds of people here along the route. Again, as Madison said, a very short distance here in downtown Plains, but the sentiment the same as the people were here and welcoming Rosalynn home, which I think is just such a testament to everything she stood for. She's been all around the world, and yet she chose here in her hometown of Plains for her final resting place. So a very touching moment as that happened.
Right. I think you just hit the nail on the head there in terms of coming back home. And I believe Jim actually talked about this the other day as well. She's been to 120 countries.
Yep.
She has went trout fishing, we heard in her services yesterday, all over from Wyoming to Venezuela. Then she went to Mount Kilimanjaro, she climbed. But she decided to come back here to Plains and give back to her people of Southwest Georgia. And I think everyone here, this small town of Plains, is beyond appreciative of Mrs. Carter's legacy.
That's right. And so here happening now in downtown Plains, again, we will wait for the procession to make its way there to the church where a private service will be held at 11 a.m. Until then, everyone here will be watching and waiting for the procession to make its way back through downtown for Mrs. Carter to be taken to the Carter residence for her final resting place.
Right, so be sure to stay with us both on the air and online at WALB.com as we continue to provide this live special report from you now. Sending it back to you and Jim and Carla.
Jamie and Madison, we appreciate it. There you see some of the procession going to the Maranatha Baptist Church. As you go by right where Madison and Jamie were, go just a few blocks and then turn left onto Bond Street and then down to the church. It's not very far.
And also in view, I believe that is the Carters' personal pastor, Tony Loudon, who we saw, of course, yesterday in Atlanta as well, presiding over those services. But he has been their personal pastor and friend for years. And he is, of course, delivering the eulogy at today's service. Now,
this is outside the Maranatha Baptist Church, where some of the members of the family appear to be arriving right now. On the scene right there right now is WALB News 10's Lena Allen. Lena, can you tell us what you see right now?
Yes, good morning, Jim and Carla. Yes, they have pulled up to the church, and it's, of course, a solemn moment for a lot of people as it did go through the downtown area. And now here at the place that is so very near and dear to the Carters' heart, their church, Maranatha Baptist Church. As you said earlier, they came right back to their roots. They have never left their roots, and they have brought plenty of opportunities to their hometown of Plains, whether it be the push for rural health care or bringing tourism and putting their hometown on the map. It's been a pleasure to cover them throughout these past few months. And again, just a lot of sadness today as we pay our respects to the Carter, or Mrs. Rosalynn Carter, the former First Lady, making her way back to the church here, coming from the downtown area. And I, again, have had the pleasure of doing countless stories here in Plains on Mrs. Carter's. Their love story is just so inspirational. It's been amazing to see it. A lot of people nationwide are inspired by their love story. Many people don't make it to 77 years, and they've been right there by each other's side. As you saw yesterday, former President Jimmy Carter right there at the memorial services, and that will be happening here again in Plains. So I'll let you just kind of view family and friends coming to the church right now again.
77 years the Carters were married, as Lena said, and that's, I was reading some presidential facts. Most of the presidents didn't live that long.
Wow.
So they were married 96 years, Mrs. Carter was, and obviously today they're calling it a celebration of the life is what's on the program that the people will receive inside the church, and I think that that's very, very fitting. This is a life that I think anybody should celebrate.
And of course admire. And when Lena talks about the love story, of course Mrs. Carter passed away at their home right there in Plains with her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, who by the way turned 99 last month. He was there right by her side. That's according to their son. As you mentioned, the 77th wedding anniversary was this summer. They had already been the longest married presidential couple in U.S. history. And of course, a lot of people reflecting on that relationship. Of course, this is the third and final day of that celebration of her life. Monday, starting in Plains with the wreath laying at Georgia Southwestern. Then yesterday, I sort of thought of it as like the official state funeral for her, with all the politicians and the celebrities and people who have interacted with them over the years in Atlanta at Emory, and then back home today where it all started. It all started.
They always talked about Mrs. Carter was a lot more interested in meeting real people, the people that live in the communities, rather than the politicians and all the big celebrities. She was always a lot more interested in meeting with the people, and obviously the things they've done when they returned to Plains, the tributes and the things they have done to help the people there. They have built the medical center there.
That is right.
They have. I had a pleasure of talking to Chip Carter, the son, who helps out with something a program Jimmy started to basically rebuild and make sure all the houses in Plains are up to the standards that they think are needed.
And that sort of piggybacks on the Habitat for Humanity involvement for the both of them, because they travel the world, not just here in the U.S., but the world, with that program, helping to build houses and make sure people had affordable housing and not substandard housing.
And that seems to be the mission. They started the Carter Center, and it was together. It was not the Jimmy Carter Center, it was the Carter Center.
That is right.
And because Rosalynn was such an important part of this family, and that the Carter Center's mission is not huge sweeping improvements. It is sweeping improvements, but it is for people. It is helping the health and the locations of where people can live and keep them healthy. And it's a great mission that they have dedicated their lives to since leaving the White House, is just helping people in the small, important ways to every individual.
As we look at an overview of the celebration of life of Rosalynn Smith Carter today, there will again be music, and there we do see the family members lining up to go inside the church. There will also be scripture readings, and the eulogy will be brought by Pastor Tony Loudon. Again, yesterday he presided over the service at Glen Memorial United Methodist Church at Emory, and then the children and of Rosalynn and Jimmy Carter, the grandchildren, will be the honorary pallbearers today. And so we will be, of course, following the service, as we mentioned, uninterrupted. We will watch the service in its entirety.
And this, of course, there we see the honor guard preparing. You see the people are in the church, a lot of choirs. On this service, there will be a lot of music. There will be some Bible readings, and there will be a eulogy. There's not a lot of different people doing a lot of different parts of this ceremony. This is exactly, I think, what the Carters have lined up for you. Probably have had this ready for a long time. And there we see the former president being escorted by his family into the church.
The music that we mentioned, of course, were her favorites, some of her favorites, and I'm sure a lot of people love Amazing Grace, and that is to be sung by everyone in the congregation and the choirs, let me say that, because we have the GSW Concert Choir and the Southwest Civic Chorus. We also have the Maranatha Baptist Church Choir. So lots of music, and the music yesterday was absolutely wonderful. Her favorites, again, we had Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood. We had the ASO Chamber Chorus. We had pianist David Osborne, a longtime favorite of Mrs. Carter and her husband, playing a medley of hymns yesterday as a prelude to the service.
Let's go back out to Lena. Lena, can you tell us what you see out there right now?
Yes, again, the Carter family is being guided into the church early. Sign of respect, and just wanting to come in here and not only grieve but celebrate who former First Lady Rosalynn Carter was as a person, as we all have come to love her. A lot of people, residents throughout Plains, have never really met the former First Lady, but they can't help but know her through her many works, humanitarian works, and just who she was as a person, who we saw her to be through her many acts of services. So that's what we're seeing here today. Just again, that respect overflowing, and just the love that people have for the former First Lady of the United States. And as you saw, former President Jimmy Carter was guided into the church as well. He was on the other side of this line of family and friends that are going in to once again show their respect, support, and love for the family. So that's kind of what we're seeing here today, just what we've been seeing throughout the 3 days of memorial services. Just again, that outpouring of support, people wanting to share their prayers and love and let the family know that they're not alone. And that's what we're
Now,
seeing
this is
again.
obviously one thing about Plains, as I've done stories and covered the Carters through the years, is they seem like everybody in Plains knows them. Because
Oh, yes.
they are
The neighbors, truly neighbors.
They would ride downtown on their bicycles and eat ice cream. They would go down for lunch. They ran the peanut business that was there for years and years. They never have lost touch with their neighbors.
And again, you know, just really making a statement after serving. We of course give honor to her for being the First Lady of the United States, but we cannot forget that she was also Georgia's First Lady. And after being Georgia's First Lady and after serving as the First Lady of the United States, they made a deliberate decision to come back to Southwest Georgia. And I mean, I think, you know, people knew, oh, they're from South Georgia, Plains, Georgia, but when they immersed themselves into the community and into, you know, they never forgot their culture. And I think people really appreciated that.
There's no doubt that they are very well respected, very well. I've never heard anybody ever say anything wrong or bad about Rosalynn. Always about how kind she is, how firm. I'm not saying she wasn't firm. When she knew what she thought, she said it.
Modern day woman before her time, right?
She was. She sat
Yes.
in on cabinet meetings while in the presidency. She was one of the first ladies, was the first lady to have an office on the West Wing in the White House. She was a definite, very smart woman, but also always, like you say, kept her ground.
They mentioned yesterday as well, in terms of being that modern woman, she also, I don't want to say demanded, but requested equal pay for the people who worked, the women who worked in you know, in that wing. And and she, like you said, sat in on the cabinet members, and she said she did that so that she would be able to have educated discussions with the president. So she knew about that, and you know, spouses have sounding boards. And so that was good that he could talk with her and she knew exactly what he was referring to.
Now, this is inside the Maranatha Baptist Church again in Plains. This is as you can see, it is filling up. This is an invitation-only event for family and friends, and you can see just how many there are. You saw the family, very large family, very full and very full of love.
This church service, funeral service, also invitation only, as was yesterday's. Of course, the governor was there, and as I mentioned, other politicians, President and Mrs. Biden attended, the vice president and the second gentleman, and the service has begun. So please watch the celebration of life for Rosalynn Carter.
And you see the funeral procession for Mrs. Rosalynn Carter leaving the Maranatha Baptist Church in Plains and playing the song Imagine, a song that I'm sure they picked out because they wanted people to imagine the world and remember what they did to try to make the world a better place.
And of course, we remember yesterday that same pianist, David Osborne, is a favorite of the Carters, but just also trying to learn more about him as he played yesterday and today. He is also known as the pianist to the presidents. So numerous presidents have been entertained by him, and apparently the Carters really loved him. So, and so very special as they recess now to take Rosalynn Carter back home to her final resting place there on the Carter compound. We, of course, heard Imagine by David Osborne.
It was what you'd expect, a funeral service for the Carters. For Rosalynn Carter, first credit, no doubt about it, but one full of faith and a challenge to the world. Let's go to WALB News 10's Lena Allen. She's outside the church. Lena, were there a number of people outside listening?
Yes, a celebration of life for the former First Lady Rosalynn Carter, packed with a lot of emotion, sadness, laughter, and happiness coming from different family members and friends of the Carter family. You're seeing the family now exit the church to lead the final motorcade through Plains back to the Carter's home. Mrs. Carter will be buried at the Carter's home, not too far from where we are now. And as you can see, a line of family and friends just leading Mrs. Carter back to the hearse. So that we can see that final motorcade. For a lot of Plains residents here, this will be their final time to say goodbye to the former First Lady and just be this close to her as they show their respect and, again, their remorse for the family here. The First Lady, again, is being led off into the hearse here. I want to go back to the service again. Just beautiful. It wasn't just about remembering and honoring the former First Lady, but also celebrating her many contributions to this world. Now, you saw many family and friends wearing leis, a big emotional connection to Mrs. Carter. Former President Jimmy Carter had on a red lei in honor of his wife. The Carter family wore the leis because the former First Lady loved Hawaii. She spent some time there during Mr. Carter's naval career. Josh Carter, one of the Carter's grandchildren, noted during the services today that Mrs. Carter referred to her time in Hawaii as one of the best times of her life. I just want to take a moment here to let you guys view once again the family getting into their cars, preparing for that motorcade.
Okay, as you all can see, the motorcade has made its way here to downtown Plains. Madison and I are standing right next to the Billy Carter service station, so if that gives you a little bit of reference of where we are. Obviously, once this motorcade gets really well and underway, we will pause for a moment of silence out of reverence for the former First Lady Rosalynn Carter, and as we take in this historic moment as well.
Absolutely, and just in the last few minutes that we've been off of the air for a moment, more people have even come. Heard people playing songs like Amazing Grace in the background of just showing their love and compassion for the former First Lady. And now that you can see on your screen, the motorcade is beginning to make its way down to Mrs. Carter's home, where she will lay for the very last time.
This route is lined with law enforcement also paying their respects and honoring the life and legacy of the former First Lady.
And making around the corner now, the hearse is about to make the turn, following these Suburbans. You could see the cadets behind the hearse, and we will get a better shot of the hearse once it makes the turn down the road to the home for the last time.
And now the family making their way down the street. You should see them on your screen momentarily as they follow behind the hearse. And once they make that turn, we will pause for a moment of silence and reverence.
You could just start to see the tears are coming down people's eyes now as we are just waiting here. Or we hear the sniffles behind us. I don't know if you could hear it, but it's a very emotional and somber moment, but it's also a moment of celebration, and Rosalynn would have wanted it any other way.
Absolutely.